I'm just sort of laying the field for these experts, and I'm coming as a psychologist, a mother, and a daughter, as Hilda said. It's interesting to me as a psychologist that almost every client I've ever had, at some point or another, the subject of death comes up, and they go, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." Most of them, most people have a natural reaction of, "I don't want to talk about that." And I usually will just kind of feel them out and see little places where I can bring up the subject more and more, because in psychology we call it desensitizing. It's just getting used to something by doing it, and doing it over and over. And that's the main thing I want to say and talk about here is talk. I guess you wouldn't guess that I'm a therapist, would you? That I really believe that talking is the most important thing. And I do that with my clients. So often I have I guess I can call it a game that I play with people when they're really frightened of something. I say, "Well, what are you most frightened of? What might happen?" "Well, I might mess it up." "Yeah, and then what might happen?" I just get them to keep imagining, because mostly we don't think about it, it's just fear. So they're thinking, well, then people might laugh at me or criticize me. And I go, and then? Well, I would be embarrassed, I would feel awful. And then? I would feel so bad, I would die. And I go, oh, there's that expression, I thought I would die of embarrassment. It creeps in there in funny little ways where we're frightened of death and yet don't want to talk about it, and yet it's always there. So I sort of was trying to use that with my mom before I was a therapist even. For some reason I didn't come in with the gene of having distaste or fear of death. I don't know why. But I really wanted to talk to her about what she thought about death, what she thought happens at the end of one's life, what plans she was making. As I got older, I was concerned that I didn't know what she wanted. Every time I would bring it up for years, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." It's just, that's too depressing, or that's too, and she would just change the subject. So again, even before I was a therapist, just bringing it up whenever I could, and if there was something on TV, and getting her to talk about it more. Gradually, she did get more comfortable to the point where she realized that she didn't want to be buried. She wanted to donate her body to science. And I thought that was a huge step for her to be even able to talk about that. And as we went on, this was over a period of probably 20 years. And I'm so glad we did all that, because the last 10 years, and especially the last 5 years of her life, she wasn't really able to that much with her Alzheimer's, although she became very sweet and beautiful, and I will always be grateful to Alzheimer's for that time. But we knew by then really what she wanted. And especially we knew she became quite adamant about donating her body to science and having it be able to be used in some way. The only problem was she finally died on a Friday before, I think it's, what's the holiday? I guess President's Day holiday. And it was going to be a 3-day holiday. And she was in Cloverdale, and she had donated her body to UCSF. Well, they couldn't come and pick it up on Friday, and in fact couldn't come until Tuesday. So we had to have her body taken to the local mortuary and kept in the refrigerator there. And I couldn't help but think the whole time, oh no, all these careful plans, just what she wanted. And now, my mother hated more than anything in the world to be cold. And I just felt that I had betrayed her somehow. to make her stay in the fridge for 3 days at the end of her life, after all that careful planning. Anyway, it did work out fine, and I know she was able to be used in the way that she wanted to. So flash forward a few years, my daughter, 4 years old, getting out of the tub one day, was talking about something that was going to happen way in the future, and I said, "Oh, honey, I'll be a pickled soon by then." And she was just terrified and horrified. Somehow that image of a pickled prune, I was just saying, is something silly. She really saw an old, shriveled up, dying person, and I think it was the first time that thought hit her, and she really went into a meltdown. And from then on, I stayed away until she got to be a teenager, and I thought, oh, we better start talking about some of this stuff. And every time I would bring it up, like my clients, like my mother, "Oh, Mom, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, please don't talk about that stuff." And little by little, bringing it in so that she could get used to it, to the point where now, she's at my house at least as we speak, she's finally beginning to say that she wants to start a family. She's 35, and I thought she never would. And we're even talking now about her and her husband moving into my house and me having a little tiny house built in the backyard. And we talked about this a lot. And what has come up many times was I still find her biting her tongue, saying, "Well, when you get older, or maybe," and I go, "It's okay. We can talk. You know we can." And she does. She's reminded now, but there's still that little hesitation. So the main thing I want to say is talk. Talk to yourself about what you want, what you think, what you imagine. Talk to your relatives. Of course, talk to your doctor. Just trying to get clearer and clearer about what you want and how you would like your last days to play out. As you will find, there's going to be a lot more choices about how we do this, and we have a lot more say in it. But even after all of that, I have another story. I was driving home from Palo Alto one night. I worked down there one day a week. I was driving back in horrible traffic and so grateful for NPR. And there was a wonderful program on where they were interviewing the people that had starred in a documentary called Extremis. Has anyone seen that? That I think it was nominated for an Oscar last year, talking about end of life and showing a family going through it in a hospital. Now, I may not have all the details right, but I think it was a brother and sister who had been very close and had talked a lot. They had talked always about what they want, exactly what I want done, signing all the right papers and everything. But then at the end, as I found with my mother, there's still lots of little questions that they come to you with. Well, you said no feeding tubes, but how about hydration? And he was evidently agonizing about, I want to make sure I do what she wanted. I wanted to make sure that everything was just the way she wanted it. And as the decisions went on, as the program went on, by the time I got home, my daughter was staying with me again then. I had gotten to a place where I was so light and so happy. I went rushing in and I said, I know, I'm totally clear. When it's end of life and I can't speak anymore, do whatever is the easiest for you. Do whatever feels the best for you. I'm going to be out of it. It doesn't matter to me. It's about you. Just do whatever feels right. I trust you. I love you. And do it. I don't recommend and I don't say that everybody should be that way, but it was a great moment of epiphany for me. Anyway, here's some people that will give you some very good ideas and thoughts about how to do this ending trip.
Thank you very much for that. Actually, that segues very well to what we're going to talk about. Hi, my name is Leslie Dietrich, and I am with the East Bay Conversation Project. We are a grant-funded project in Alameda and Contra Costa County, administered by the Alameda Contra Costa Medical Association, and we live to promote the conversation and to give you the tools to have the conversation, to think about it, and ultimately manifest in an advanced healthcare directive. A lot of people tend to think that that is the focus, and it is important. But it can't happen, and it doesn't happen well, unless you have the conversation. And so I want to, the goal of it, what is the goal? It is to get the care that we want, and also to help make sure that our family isn't burdened with, and left with guilt and uncertainty. Because that is a very common outcome if people have to make decisions for us and they don't know what we want. Statistically, I'm going to share that in a 2015 survey by the California Healthcare Foundation, 80% of the people surveyed think advanced healthcare planning is important, but only 25% of them have actually recorded their wishes. Less than 50% have actually talked to their family about their wishes. And 90% think talking to your doctor is important, but only 20% have talked to their doctor. And so clearly the need and the understanding that it has to happen is there, but we need to get over that hump. And why are we in this position? Why are we all here today when you think about it? Because if you look at, say, 1900, I love history. In 1900, people died of predominantly communicable diseases, accidents, and the all too familiar cardiovascular events and cancer. That's changed dramatically. My father was born in 1917. My grandparents, his parents, were born in the 1870s, which is late in my baby. And they would look at this and think, this is so alien. And why? It's because of the incredible changes and the phenomenal changes in the healthcare options and modern medicine, the miracles that we have at our fingertips. But in the process, we've removed ourselves from what was done in 1900, where if someone was ill, they often discovered it very late. They didn't have the diagnostics, and you didn't die in the hospital. You went home, and your family cared for you, and your community cared for your family. And so it was a part of life. You grew up knowing this. And one little bit of history that might seem a little, it struck me, was when children play. You know how when children play, they are reflecting what goes on in life and what they might do when they're growing up or how to navigate issues. It's just part of child play. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, children played funerals. They would lay their dolls out. They would talk about what burial they're going to get. And of course, there was a hierarchy. If I didn't get into the details on that, there was a hierarchy of who could get buried where. And today, if our grandchildren, a 5-year-old was out there playing with their doll, what are you doing? I'm playing funeral. We just might thank you. We probably start asking some questions. And so the wonderful things that are available to us now for our care, we can diagnose. Of course, the reasons that we die now are different. We have a heart attack, or excuse me, that's not the correct way to term it. Cardiovascular disease. We have cancer, chronic lower respiratory disease, and then accidents. Things have shifted. And things that 50 years ago we couldn't treat, give us go home and rest and say your goodbyes, we can now turn almost into manageable chronic diseases. If you diagnose cardiovascular problems early, they're treatable for years. Cancer, in certain circumstances, life can be extended for quite some time. And so the trajectory toward death is really different. We used to die very quickly when we were diagnosed. And I'm going to say one of my favorite sayings, it's Buddhist, and I've seen it in different iterations, but it is, death is the mirror through which the true meaning of life is reflected. Death is the mirror through which the true meaning of life is reflected. If we keep hiding from it, we are denying ourselves and our families and the people who love us the chance to heal and to be closer. That is what we have lost in the miracles that we live with today. And I think the reason that we're here today and we're interested is because we are trying to come full circle to that, to incorporate the gifts that we have today in modern medicine with the realization that we lost something and we need to connect better. So how many here have actually heard of the Conversation Project? Has anyone heard about it? Okay, you look wonderful. And what about, some of you I understand have seen the film Being Mortal. Have any seen? Okay, a few less. Okay, very, very good. Yes, until the one. Yes, absolutely. So and I say that because then I can ground what I'm going to say on that. One of the things, everybody says, okay, well, not everybody, but let's say 10 of the people that say, yes, I need to do this, they don't really know how. And that's where the East Bay Conversation Project comes in and the National Conversation Project. There are tools. And we provide tools both on our website, and I've got my favorites in your hands right now. And we also do all-day trainings, 9-4 free trainings 4 times a year. And the information on that is in a flyer if anyone is interested in attending that. But I'm going to share with you a few of the tools that we have, and there are more, and you can email me, and I'll be glad to connect you with others as well. It's hard to think about how to talk about this. How do we think about it? How do we start? Choices in Caring is one of our favorites, and it's also one of the favorites of a number of therapists that I talk to. And this is one of the documents that you have in your packet. And it just helps you with questions like, if you were to become seriously ill and medical treatment decisions were made for you by someone else, how would you feel about the following statements? And I'm not going to go through all of them because you can do that on your own. But by answering these questions and then turning it over and saying, can you name the things that you hope to be able to enjoy for the rest of your life? And what is memorable about you? In answering these questions, it helps to ground how you want to frame the desired care that you want as you approach end of life. Some people want all kinds of care. Some people say they feel differently about it. It's very individual. And I will be right up front. Some people will ask the question, we can only know so much. We are so involved in our culture and control. At the end of life, only 50% of us will be able to actually express our wishes. And also, we like to think, I'm going to think of every possible thing. I'm reading all these articles about what happened to this man and that woman and that mother and that daughter. And you can't. Bottom line is, you can only think of the higher level things that you need. And in so doing, help the people who care about you gain an understanding of what you want. Just like you were explaining about your mother, and you then saying to your daughter, do, in your case, do what feels right for you, because we end up being so burdened. And so there's only so much you can do, and then you have to let go. An advanced healthcare directive, well, let me back up for a moment. After you do Choices in Caring, this is one, from the National Conversation Project, is the Conversation Toolkit. And this helps you take those questions a little bit further and refine them. And you then come out the other side of this, and this is something you can do on your own, or with your family, or with your loved one, or with your agent. And this helps you to ground your thoughts on your care toward the end of life. One of the most important components of this is the agent that you choose, or sometimes called the healthcare proxy. I'm going to say, some people will say, I don't have anyone to name, and that's okay. If you don't, filling out an advanced healthcare directive still gives your healthcare team an idea of what you want, because they want to do the right thing, but the default is to treat everything because you can. We're going to do everything we can to keep you alive, unless you say, here's the wall, stop there. So if you don't have someone to name as an agent, that's okay. But if you do, there's some really important things to think about. It's not always the first person you think of. Just because someone loves you dearly does not mean that they are ideal for the very heavy responsibility it takes to be an agent. It takes someone, A, who does know what you want, who has the personality that they can take a lot of information coming at them from the healthcare providers about the different potentials for your care, and then they need to think about that somewhat dispassionately if they can. Some people are too close to you to be able to do that. Also, keep in mind that it's not uncommon to have family members come in that you don't see, or perhaps not every family has everyone singing Christmas carols together or the holidays. Sometimes there's some contention here and there. And when you have that, it's not uncommon to have someone come in and swoop in and say, oh no, I want you to do everything. And it can very much be against the wishes of the patient. You can help mitigate that by having what you want in writing and by communicating your wishes with not only your agent, but everyone that is involved. The more you have the conversation, the better. But there's some things here about choosing an agent that are important. It's got to do with them knowing you, understanding the responsibility that's involved, and it is a heavy responsibility. I'm not going to lie. And if you give them the information that they need to help you, they can do a good job and step away from that feeling that they have made a difference, that they're doing something to help you, even as difficult as it is for them. Because one of the major things that occurs in families and caregivers helping people who don't express their wishes is they walk away feeling guilty and confused, and they carry that with them for years sometimes. So it's important to think about much of this as you determine an agent. I've included, I would suspect that a number of people here already do have an advanced healthcare directive in place. It's a common thing to be done for financial planning and estate planning. That doesn't mean you necessarily really sat down and got into the nitty-gritty with that person who helped you with it. And so I'm going to say that even if you do have one, this is pertinent, because it's important to revisit these documents periodically. If we make this document at 65 and we're out there still water skiing, but something changes when we're 70 or older, we need to revisit this. Your agent may have moved. It might be your daughter who's now got 2 small children to take care of. There are the person that you've named in the event, it might be your partner. Perhaps that person has now been diagnosed with something that will really take a lot of energy on your part. And you don't think in all those moments of stress, I need to go change this. But you do, because an accident or something can happen. And you don't want to burden that person with having to make those decisions if that person is in fact now ill. So when a life event occurs to you, the person you've named as an agent, or your family, let them know. You can do this at any time. The most recently dated one is the one that will take precedence. Just make absolutely certain that you make sure everyone that has it to begin with gets the new one. You want to give it to your agent and to your healthcare provider, and hopefully also to the family members, and you keep a copy for yourself. Don't make it and hide it away. That's really important. And I'll be able to answer questions afterwards if anyone has any questions. I have in here, we have our next training coming up, and that's going to occur in the Claremont area of Oakland on the 23rd, Monday the 23rd of October. And does anybody have any questions?
Sally, we will leave the questions for after everyone speaks. I didn't do some of the housekeeping notes. Also, while I'm interrupting for a second, there is a sign-up sheet being passed around. Please be sure to do it, to sign up your name, and let us know if there's any information that you want to receive we will attend to that. We've had a little bit of an oversubscription, a happy thing to happen, but we can assure you that we can send you all the materials that are being discussed today. Thanks, Sally. Let's acknowledge Sally.
Do I have my technical person here? I'm Dr. Sally Sample, and I'm very honored to be here. In addition, on my bio, I do also do palliative care consults inpatient at John Muir, both Walnut Creek and Concord. So I have the privilege of seeing a lot of stuff. I used to be a hospitalist, and then I morphed into palliative care and hospice maybe 12 years ago. But I get the privilege of seeing a lot of the things that it's extremely important to have an advanced directive. And there are a couple things that Leslie said that I'd like to emphasize. I run across all the time people that cannot speak for themselves. And that's when the advanced directive comes into play. It's critical you have on there who you want to speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself. And I thought you did a wonderful job about describing that. It has to be accurate, and they can't be dead. A lot of times we get advanced directives, and the first agent is already gone. And the other thing, remember that my agent is a friend. Because I don't feel like my family just can't, it's too much of a responsibility. So remember, it doesn't have to be your daughter or your spouse. It can be somebody, a friend. And then the last thing I wanted to say about advanced directives is when you go to your lawyer or whoever you have fill it out, there is a boiler, whatever that expression is, the rubber stamp. If I have a terminal, what is it? Boilerplate, thank you. Generic statement, like if I have a terminal illness, you need to be specific. And like somebody said, if you don't know, just say, I want my agent to do whatever's the easiest thing. That's fine. Mine says, if I cannot tell you I'm thirsty or hungry, and I can't, please do not offer me food or water. So that's right in my advanced directive. All my agent knows, my family knows. So they don't have to say, or should we put a feeding tube in? Should we force her to eat? So anyway, that's my 2 bits for advanced directive. So I'm going to talk to you about palliative care and hospice. People don't even in the medical field, trust me, nobody knows what palliative care is. So I'm going to go over it, and I apologize if you already know, but I'm going to go over it, and we'll all have questions afterwards. Sorry, this is all my keys. Let's see if it still works. Okay. What the heck is palliative care? I love puppy slides, and I like slides because it focuses our attention. So palliative care is really the blanket over what you're already doing. So Mrs. Jones just got diagnosed with breast cancer. She's 35 years old. She's working. She has 2 kids. She gets palliative care. She wants treatment. She wants radiation. She wants surgery. But palliative care helps her understand what the illness means to her, what her spiritual problems are with having a chronic illness all of a sudden, because breast cancer often is a chronic illness. So it's over whatever you're already doing. So these are definitions. It's care for the entire person, and it's for somebody with a chronic illness. That's not necessarily life-limiting, but it's about the physical, psychological, social, spiritual, at any stage of an illness. It's not just about end of life. And then my favorite person in the world, Eric Cassell, he calls it to minimize suffering and promote healing. Healing even when you can't be cured, because you can heal spiritually. So other ways to look at palliative care, it really is a consult service. So it's just like you'd be going to a palliative care provider. It's just like going to your cardiologist, to your oncologist, to your primary care. We're a subspecialty to try to look at the whole person, including the social structure. So you're kind of getting the picture? And who is it for? It's for anyone, I think I've said this, anyone with chronic illness. So congestive heart failure. At the very beginning, when you get a pacemaker, you should have a palliative care consult. That's just the way I feel. It's not in the cardiology guidelines yet, but in most of the oncology guidelines, it is there. When you get a diagnosis of chronic leukemia, prostate cancer, you should have a palliative care consult. Now, that has not filtered into the practices yet of all oncologists, but from when I started this profession till now, we have made some progress. It's titanic movement, glacial movement, but there has been movement, and I'm an optimist. I think that it's going to get better. So, and again, remember, palliative care is an extra layer on top of what you've already won. And I have a good example of somebody who used palliative care. So, and then hospice. Hospice is all palliative care, and I have a diagram here. Hospice is when you have less than 6 months to live, with the best guess. So I'm not God, but best guess. And you want to forego treatment for disease processes and prolonging your life. So hospice aggressively treats symptoms, but not diseases. So if you're short of breath, we make sure you're more comfortable, but we don't really want to know why you're short of breath. And we don't treat your lung cancer if that's why you're short of breath. We treat your shortness of breath. Okay, so this is the diagram. This is the classic diagram. So this is time. You get diagnosed right here. Like I said, at the very initial diagnosis, palliative care plays a role. But as time goes, and this is disease-modifying treatment, and this is palliative care. So as time goes by, there's a lot less to do. So say you have COPD or emphysema. There's treatments at the beginning, but as the disease progresses, there's a lot less available. And palliative care has a bigger role until you get to 6 months or less, and then you get hospice. And I really think, I want everybody to die in hospice, and yes, everybody is going to die. We don't talk about that, but it's a given. What happens with hospice is the people that are left behind get bereavement. And that's part of the hospice benefit. It's 13 months of bereavement. So I think that's the continuum of care where palliative care plays a role. So what are the goals of palliative care? And coordinating care. So many people, I can't tell you how many people we take care of. I have an outpatient palliative care home practice. So a lot of dementia, lots and lots of dementia. And many patients don't know, families don't know, this is a terminal illness. It's progressive. And you don't, maybe she doesn't need a cardiologist. Seriously, I had somebody in Rossmore, a senior community. She's 100. She lived alone. She was very, very healthy for a 100-year-old. But her daughter noticed, she was a palliative care patient, noticed a little thing on her leg. Took her to her dermatologist, unknown to us. Dermatologist did a biopsy. Of course, it was cancer, radiation. Of course, she got an infection, pain. And is this going to change the course of her life? The pain and the infection might. Was the cancer going to change? No. So that could have been something we could have helped her prevent that whole procedure. And so maintaining dignity, I'm big on dignity therapy. Whoever you are, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out who are you, even if you can't speak to us. Where were you born? What was your life like? What are your goals? What matters to you? And we try to maintain that dignity wherever that patient is. Most of the time, people want to stay at home. Symptom management. I am a wizard with constipation. So if you have constipation, you won't after you see me. I'm a wizard. And that's important. So we help define. So exactly, we do the conversation project with everyone. We're not, well, some of us are experts, but we
we start the conversation. Sometimes I was at the hospital over the weekend, and a woman in her 70s, very bad lung disease. She had a hard time breathing. Terrible. She's just one of those people very wound up. Anyway, now she can't breathe, so it's a bad combination. I pulled out the pulse, which is the pink form, and she said, no, can't talk about it. So, okay, baby steps. I pulled it out and put it on her desk, or her bedside table. And I went the next day, and she said, okay, I can talk about a little bit. So it's baby steps. We don't make the whole jump with the first visit. And then helping explain the journey. The best example is the Alzheimer's, and dementia of all kinds, because people don't know. Nobody has sat down and told them. Even if the patient's been in and out of the hospital 6 times, nobody's told them this is going to happen. And she's not going to get better, and she's going to get worse every time she's in the hospital. So we help with the journey. And then we're the medical advocate. Some of these people don't have anybody else. So how's it delivered? And I can talk about this more, but most hospitals are they have really good programs. Where we don't have good programs, especially in Alameda County, are outpatient clinics and home-based. Home-based, and unfortunately I don't come down here. I'm only in Contra Costa County. So this is an example. This is my favorite story. She's 90 years old. She was born in Germany, so Nazi Germany. And she and her husband moved 6 years. She's 90 years old, moved to Rossmore. They had 2 children. One was in California government. You know who he is, but I won't mention his name. And the other one was a high-powered lawyer in New York City. The one in Sacramento visited quite often, but they had hired caregivers. She had very early dementia. So let me show you. This is not her, but this looked like her. Only when I met her, her New York Times was upside down. She read the whole thing, but she obviously wasn't reading it. But it was going through those motions, comforting. She had a really good quality of life sometimes, but she had spinal stenosis, which causes pain, and she started sitting more. Just typical older person. Pain, and she was confused enough or cognitively impaired enough that she couldn't force herself to get up because it hurt. She started eating less because she's sitting more. I mean, it's this typical kind of dwindling thing. She had 3 hospitalizations 6 months prior to us because of infection, and each time she came home, like I was saying, she didn't return to her prior baseline. She was weaker, eating less, thinner. And the family had no clue. They were like, why is mom not bouncing back? So in October, this is when we took her on. The family called us for pain control and guidance. So we brought her into our palliative care program. So all of those goals, the first thing, like I said, is we help explain mom's not going to bounce back. When she goes to the hospital, she gets more confused. They have to tie her down or put her into one of those cage beds now. They're called stoma beds. It's horrible because she's so confused. Just to ensure her safety, they have to restrain her. And then she's treated for infection. She does not return to her prior function. And then symptom management. I'm very good at pain. Spinal stenosis is tough, but I'm very good at pain management as well. So I put her on a little bit of methadone, which is what we use for chronic pain now. In little old ladies, at 1 milligram twice a day is wonderful. And she was better. And then we also customized her goals. First off, of course she's going to be full coach. She's going to go back and forth to the hospital. That was the initial conversation. But slowly we continued the conversation. Slowly, okay, DNR. Do not resuscitate, slowly. But she's still going to go back to the hospital. So we fill out the polls. This is the pink form. And finally, I remember it was Christmas. It was Christmas. I was in England, and the staff went to her home and had a conversation because the daughter came in from New York. And then for the family, again, we were guiding her disease and prepared them for the future because she was dwindling. She was becoming more bedbound. And over the next 2 months, she had 2 bladder infections that we treated in the home, so she didn't have to go in the hospital. Pain was managed, but she became more confused and more bedbound. I mean, she was just dwindling. Diet went from regular to chopped to soft to pureed. Very typical decline. And I tried to normalize that for the family, and they were really resisting, but coming on board slowly. So, again, navigate, I already talked about that. So in February, so this is a couple months after we filled up the pulse, she had a change in condition. So they called us instead of 911. I dropped everything. Thank goodness Rossmore's closed. I went over there. She probably had a stroke. She was unresponsive. And we got hospice. She got admitted to hospice right away. We called the daughter, all the grandchildren. She was admitted to hospice, and she died in her bed, surrounded by her family. So this is a perfect example of the conversation, taking care of people, somebody with dementia, in the right way. And this was just like a wonderful story where we helped this family tremendously. So how can palliative care help? Stay home, if that's what your goals are. Again, it's very patient-centered, whatever you want. If you want to have the 5th line of chemotherapy, I will be your advocate. But if you want to know what your choices are and you choose to stay at home at any cost, I will be your advocate and I'll try to help you. Educate the family, symptom management, like I said, when appropriate, transition to hospice, and above all, maintain dignity. So what's next? CMS, just Congressman DeSaulnier, I don't think is in your district. I forget, I don't think so. But there is a bill in Congress right now to try to increase palliative care education and staff, so because there's not enough of us as we age. There's not, including me. I just turned 65 this year. Yes. Not the Medicare card. There's not enough palliative care for our aging population. So this is, and I can, Hilda can give you this slide, and I'm sorry I didn't bring any, but I have my email. I can give you all the slides. But the differences between hospice care, hospice is a Medicare benefit. So if you have Medicare or Medicare Advantage, they have Medicare, I mean, hospice is a benefit. Some of the commercial insurances don't. Not very many, but some don't. So it's less than 6 months, like I said. Hospice is 24 hours a day. This is our program, it's only 95. It depends. Palliative care, there's no regulation. So if you have palliative care, you have to find out what their hours are. Who pays for it? Medicare pays 100%. It's wonderful. They pay for everything related to the terminal illness. If you need hospital bed, oxygen, all the medications, all the services. Palliative care, unfortunately, does not. If you remember in 2005 or 8, when the Affordable Care Act was being developed, there was a whole death panels thing. That was palliative care. So that got scrapped. So medications, again, not covered by palliative care. It's just a consult service. Medications aren't covered if you have hospice. Primary provider, you still have to have primary care. We're just consulting. In palliative care and hospice, you can choose your primary care or you can choose us.
1 minute.
I'm done. And then team members, you have hospice is an interdisciplinary team, and we meet every 2 weeks to discuss every hospice patient. Palliative care is the same thing. Yeah, there's my email address. Please call email me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send anybody anything.
Hi, I'm Lori. I'm last here. I'll try to keep this brief. I can talk about this stuff for days, but I don't think you want to hear that much. So, sorry? Yeah, I think I'll put my little timer here just to keep myself going. Okay. So I'm here to talk about the work of end-of-life doulas. It's a fairly new field, and it's growing along with continued awareness these days about people addressing fears around end of life. You might have heard of death cafes that are out there now. It's modeled after the service delivery of birth doulas, which many years ago was fairly unheard of, and now pretty much every pregnant woman will talk about having a doula, especially if they're trying to have a natural birth in a hospital, you need to have a doula. So we foresee doulas being part of the conversation for end-of-life care. That chart you had, I see in the not-too-distant future, doulas being part of that care team. We got nurse, doctor, social worker, volunteers, doulas. We believe that both birth and death are natural processes. They're the two primary bookends to our life experiences that we will all face. Many of us doulas were hospice volunteers who, like me, felt that there was something missing in the care delivery service that hospice can provide to the patient and the family. And the International End-of-Life Doula Association, or INALDA, is the training program that I went through, and it was formed just because of this. The founder was a hospice worker for many years. He felt something was missing. He had a conversation with a friend who was going through birth doula training, and he had this light bulb of that would really help in service delivery for end-of-life care, which is the experience I had. I was a birth doula and a childbirth educator for many years. I had a home birth with my daughter 30 years ago, and became a childbirth educator. And then fast forward to a few years ago, I was with my mother in an inpatient hospice, Corinne's house, actually. And as wonderful as it was, two things came out of that. First, I was struck by the similarities between the birthing and the dying experience, which was fascinating to me, but apparently I wasn't alone. One of the nurses there had been a midwife, so we had an amazing conversation, and I just had chills, and I thought, God, there's something here, there's something here. But I also felt later that there was something missing. As wonderful again as it was like, wow, my sister and I, we didn't get, I felt, the emotional or the spiritual support that could have been there. So, having been a birth doula, I came to recognize how helpful the doula construct can be for end-of-life care as well. Mostly it's manifested in the amount of time that doulas have to spend. So typically in the hospice team, the nurse comes out a couple times a month, or then it obviously increases as the person declines. The social worker comes out. We don't have agendas. We don't have that checklist. We don't have the checklist that social workers and nurses go through. We're just there to establish a relationship with the family and the patient and offer this ongoing support structure that they may not be getting otherwise. What else? Let's see. So our role, we can step in as soon as the person gets on hospice. Ideally, people get on hospice at that early 6-month or less prognosis, but oftentimes people wait because there is that denial going on. They get on hospice, they think it means that they are actually dying. Other times we'll step in is as the patient's condition starts declining. They will call on us to actually be there and offer that level of support. What we do is we help patients explore their values, what their needs are, what their concerns are, what their fears are, and we help them make informed choices for their dying time based on their values and their wishes. So it's a continuation of all of the, especially the palliative care and the hospice care that people have. Again, we have that time. We can stay longer. we can visit more frequently, and so we have that opportunity to develop that rapport and that relationship with the patient and the family. So we start working, we address the emotions of fears. Part of what we can do is address that life meaning that we all talked about. We can help them do a life review, explore the meaning of their lives. We can help them put their life into a perspective, and maybe even end up doing what we call a legacy project starting with the patient, ideally, but depending on where we step in, we can work with the family. It could be something as simple as a scrapbook, or a photo album, or a collection of recipes. Some people even will have, when the person is at home, they'll have like a guest book outside the bedroom. There'll be a table and a chair, and sometimes people will say, ask people to take their shoes off and take a breath and relax. And the people who visit can write in this book, and then the patient can have that. Someone can read it to them. And it can make them, it's like an early, eulogy that they get, hearing the impact that they had on people in their lives. And then afterwards, the family has it to call upon. We can provide caregiver relief. So, one of the, it's like, people want to die at home, but that necessitates having a primary caregiver. That can be an extremely trying role, and they often don't get the support that they need. So they're on 24/7 care. Sometimes people don't have extended family who can come in and take turns. So that's part of what doulas can do. We can step in, spend time, hour, 2, 3 with the patient while the family goes off and does whatever, takes a break. And then we also sit vigil with the patient and the family at the end. We can add support. We can hold that space for the experience, for whatever arises. Because it's pretty much guaranteed what the progression is going to be ultimately, but as in birth, there's a lot of variation within that main process that happens. What we do with hospice services, we can supplement the existing services that are offered. Again, we can visit more often, stay longer, and we can augment or enhance the services that hospice provides. Again, based on that relationship that we've established. Sometimes it's easier for patients to discuss their fears and their concerns with a friendly, objective outsider than a family member. They don't want to burden their families. Their families are already going through the grieving process, and we can help facilitate communication, because sometimes we'll hear the patient will say, "Oh, I can't talk about the fact that I'm dying with my kids," and then the kids will say, "Oh, don't tell mom she's on hospice because we don't want her to know she's dying." So it's like, oh, what's the disconnect here? And so sometimes the doula can be that intermediary. I don't know if any of you have heard of Go Wish cards. It's a form of, people going through the decision-making process. And I came upon the cards in a list form. And there's like 30, 35 of these items that people will say, I want to die at home. I want to have my financial affairs in order. And they rate these cards based on what's the most important to them. What's most important, what's somewhat important, what's not important. And what I saw was that there's at least 10 to 15 of these that doulas can specifically respond to. For instance, to have my family prepared for my death, to be free from anxiety, to prevent arguments by making sure my family knows what I want, to take care of unfinished business with family and friends, to remember personal accomplishments, to have someone who will listen to me, not dying alone, to be able to talk about what death means, to be able to talk about what scared me. And I was struck by this, that often the person isn't going to have anybody else to talk about this with. They'll have their doctors and they'll have their nurses. And again, they don't have the time. They may not have that relationship. But sometimes a different nurse will come in and out, a different social worker will come in and out. And so I thought, this is where doulas can come in. This is what we do. I know this is you know, it's a no-brainer to me. It's really exciting work to me that is fulfilling this filling in the gaps that is often present in typical end-of-life care. Another way, as someone put it, was that we can help make hospice service delivery more closely match their brochures, which I thought was really interesting. When you look at typical hospice brochures, you know, there's hand-holding, they're sitting there, and a lot of times people will report, families will report back later that it's like, well, I didn't get that, and where were they? And they just kind of swooped in at the end, and I didn't have that kind of relationship that was kind of promoted. So I thought that's an interesting, again, another gap that we can fill in. Doulas can. Okay. I'll wrap this up. Doulas can work with hospices as part of their standard team. Many doulas are hospice volunteers who incorporate the additional training and the tools that they have by learning how to be a doula. Some hospices have their doulas trained, their volunteers trained to be doulas. For instance, Hospice of San Luis Obispo, all of their volunteers are trained doulas. We're contacted and referred by doctors, therapists, gerontologists, social workers. Patients and family members themselves can contact us, and sometimes, and whether or not hospice is involved, although it typically is, but it doesn't have to be. We can work independently of hospice. We can visit in the home or in the hospital or any facility that the patient is in, skilled nursing facilities, assisted living, etc. And sometimes a family member will make advanced arrangements with a doula. So especially like somebody's living out of state and they know that they're not going to be there on an ongoing basis, we can be part of that team to know that we can step in, stay in contact with that family member, and that we step in as needed. I wanted to end with a thought that I heard in training somewhere along the line, that dying isn't necessarily traumatic, but dying in a death-phobic culture often can be. And often without the adequate help that folks like doulas can provide. In other cultures, like you were saying, back in the day, it was just, death was a normal part of life. Other cultures don't have the fear of death that we have in this culture. And so if we can, whatever we can do to help allay people's fears and die in peace, and it's an honor to be present with people at the end of